Hello and welcome to the show, and welcome to the first ever Forza Motorsport 5 versus the community. Race 1 was at the Yas Marina. I believe this is the South Circuit, when we are racing sort of C-Class cars. There's no restrictions as such to them, just build a C-Class car and see what happens. As expected, the first corner was... there were a few incidences, minor scrapes, possibly. It was always likely to be a bit trickier on Forza 5, especially on a track that people may be less familiar with, and on a track in which the curbs are horrendous. The curbs are really nasty on here. I get very brave and squeeze around the outside of two vehicles. That was a hold your breath and pray it works moment. Yeah, I just about got away with that. I got a lot of airtime off that curb. Didn't realise I went flying. Then it landed, then took a tumble further back. Yeah, it was a little bit of a busy first lap. I quite like this version of Yas Marina, actually. If it wasn't for the curves being so nasty, this would be a really quite a cool track to race around. At the front, there was a four-way battle. Well, at the moment, it was a sort of a three-way battle for second place. It would soon become a four-way battle for the lead as they run up towards the final corner. The Integra does well to get around the outside of the Datsun into that final corner as well. However, now there is a very long straight, and this drag race down towards the first corner was kind of important on this circuit. Your first corner is probably your best overtaking spot, and the Datsun had just ridiculous straight line speed. The Datsun has gone from 4th to 1st in the course of one straight, while the CRX has gone from 1st to 4th. That Datsun, I think, must have had rockets in the back of it. That was ridiculously quick in a straight line. Struggled with the corners, but was very fast on the very long straight. You saw it might have stood on the background. I was having problems with my CRX not liking the curves very much, and the Sierra that we're following at the moment would also have problems with the curves. The very big slide. Well done on saving that one. Yeah, curbs were nasty here, and if you weren't careful, you see the Integra there as well, getting a bit sideways on the exit. If you weren't careful, you could have all sorts of problems. Things then went all a little bit skew with at the front. I think the Sierra just didn't realise there was a Datsun on the inside, turned into him. This is one of the problems I have with Forza 5. It's just the lack of any distance indicator. It's very hard to tell when you're side by side with another car. You can't necessarily just look to the side because you're going to have to move the stick if you're in the middle of the corner. It's not as easy as simply looking in the mirrors as it would be in real life, and the cockpit views, they try, but you know, the lack of being able to move your head around, it causes a problem. Husky goes around the outside of a Honda CRX, doesn't really have to worry about overtaking as such. The CRX crashes on his own accord, which is fair enough. Yeah, Husky goes up the inside of a Punto as well. When I set out to do this, it was always likely it was going to be kind of filled with more mistakes. I wouldn't necessarily say worse driving, it's just mistakes were easier to make on here. Despite this game having been out since, what, November time? Yeah, the lack of grip, and I think people's general inexperience with this, especially if you do a lot of swapping between Forza 4 and Forza 5 like I do, yeah, it is kind of tricky to get used to this game with a lot less grip, and the cars handle very differently. And despite the engine damage done to the big BMW, it still managed to get past Husky's Beetle by the first corner. That BMW was pretty damn quick in a straight line. My CRX was doing fairly well. I was up in 4th and setting pretty decent lap times until everything went wrong. Yes, I put a weird on a curb again, which was a silly idea, and I couldn't catch it. One of the downsides of running such a short wheelbase car is if you do that and you try and save it, it doesn't end very well. It's very rare you can save that kind of thing when you're running simulation steering with such a tiny car as I had. And yeah, I was facing the wrong way, surprised a Mustang by being on the inside of that corner. Yeah, it is one of the things that you have to get used to with this game. I'm sure with a bit of tuning I could probably fiddle about with the suspension and get that working and stopping the car from doing that. But I may have I wouldn't say I rush built this car, but yeah, I didn't tune the suspension. I completely didn't realise there was an MR2 up my inside on that corner again. Really need a distance indicator. It'd be really kind of useful. To have that. A lot of overtaking as well was done when the person in front made a larger mistake. Sure, you know, when you're racing on Forza 4, overtaking happens when a car in front runs wide, although it was more on here as if somebody just made a big error, like I did there. You know, is less about breaking your opposition and more of hoping that they fall off the road. Or in this case, the Shelby Mustang having much better straight line speed than the car in front. Yeah, there was some good overtaking going on, although a lot of it was down to somebody making a mistake or there being a coming together or whatever. As the Mustang and the MR2 both get things a little bit wrong through the first corner, I managed to catch back up to the pair of them. And then I'm going to try a brave overtaking manoeuvre on the Mustang. I was going to go for it again, trying to go around the outside of the two fast right-handers. Don't quite have the acceleration to get my car on the outside though. However, I do have phenomenal brakes, and as we come into the whatever corner number this is, kind of tight hairpin, I have a surprise move. I don't think the Mustang expected me to have a dive there. I just have so much better brakes on this car because it is incredibly light that I could get the move done there. At the front, things were pretty close between a Datsun and a Honda Integra. The Datsun, however, though, it was so stupidly fast in a straight line. It's making it very hard for the Integra to get past it. As they go into the final corner, the Honda gets on the inside and has a much better drive. The Datsun just could not get turned, just couldn't make that final corner. However, in a straight line, and the Datsun is gone. That's the straight line speed of that car is just phenomenal. The Honda could do absolutely nothing about it. There's nothing you could really do against that sort of speed. Sure, the Honda's going to be all over the back of him as they come into the first corner. All of that gap that the Datsun made on the straights is pretty much gone by the time they get through that first corner. But it is so hard to overtake a car that's got this much straight line speed and this much acceleration over you. And sure enough, with the Datsun not making any massive errors, he could pull away and keep a fairly safe gap back to the Honda. Now, one of the other downsides of the Forza replays is that while we do have them in multiplayer now, which is very good, we do not have any telemetry or any form of information on them, so I do not know what lap is what. There's no way of telling as far as I can figure out. So this makes doing this kind of difficult because I don't know what the final lap is. In the end, with this race, the Datsun was to go on and win. And yeah, unfortunately, the endings are going to be a bit dodgy. With these, I can't really do much about it. Race 2 was at the more well-known Catalunya National Circuit. Would have had more experience on this track, driven it quite a few times, on Forza 4. The first corner is notorious for accidents. However, we got away with it, amazingly. The first time we run this track, normally we have all sorts of problems. Ignore the Civic in the background. No, cover it up. Nobody saw that. We often have problems in that corner. It's a tough corner. If you're further back, it goes downhill. It's very hard to see past the cars in front. Very easy to miss a braking point and go soaring into the pack. However, despite all of the lack of grip, etc., we all got through there fairly cleanly. Yeah, there was a little bit of bumping. Unfortunately, a Civic ended up on the dirt. The Datsun didn't come off much better, but there wasn't any major incidences on the first lap. The sticky grass is not something I like on here. We really shouldn't have sticky grass, especially not on that very fast chicane. Incredibly easy for a car to end up out there, stops absolutely dead, and then in trying to get going again has another car run just a tiny bit wide and collect him and cause a very big crash. I know it's designed to kind of give penalties if you try to cut a corner, but that is a really dumb place to have it. An MR2 tries to make a move on a Mustang through the tight chicane. Very hard to overtake there because it's just so narrow. The Mustang gives the place though to the MR2, and the Civic that cut the corner as well gives the place to the Datsun. They run onto the back straight though. The Mustang has got so much speed that there is really nothing the Toyota can do about it. The Datsun is also closing in rather quickly, and as they head towards the first corner, the MR2 may well be better on the brakes. However, he's stuck on the outside and has got pretty much nowhere to go. You can't really do much in that situation, and is going to have to settle for losing the position. However, it is much better through the corners, the MR2. In fact, the Civic behind him is even faster, and it wouldn't be long before they'll be back right behind the Datsun. The Civic, though, is going for the most impressive. For me, that's probably overtaking the evening, going around the outside of an MR2 at the top of the hill. Almost gets around the outside of a Mustang as well. A little bit of a bump between some of the cars. The MR2 ends up falling off the road. The Mini sort of makes the most of things, moving up 2 positions in all of that. Still very impressive to go around the outside of a car in Forza 4 at that corner, let alone on the much less grip that is Forza 5. The Mini was making good progress through the field. This Mini was actually very quick, However, it still didn't have an answer for the Datsun in a straight line, and the Mustang was also quicker than it as they run into the first corner. The Mustang's thinking he's having a look, not going to have quite as good a brakes as the Mini, and sure enough the Datsun can't get his car stopped either, and the Mini dives back into third. Datsun's not giving up, he's having a little bit of a think there, but no, you're never quite going to get that move done. The Shelby's having a bit of problem keeping his car on the road, not exactly surprising, a big slidey powerful muscle car such as that. But yeah, there was some good overtaking going on, don't get me wrong. On here, it was a little bit more uncommon, if you like. I'd started right at the back. All of these races I started in last place, which wasn't much fun. This is a random grid order as well. Thank you, Forza. And I had not been involved in crashes. My car wasn't damaged. I'd just been involved in avoiding of crashes, which had cost me quite a bit of time. However, I was making progress through the field as cars in front made mistakes, and my CRX was actually quite a good car. It's pretty damn fast. I thought about going around the outside of a Fiat, couldn't quite get far enough alongside, so I had to dive up the inside into the very far chicane. A little bit of a bump, I do apologise on that one. Managed to get the pass done though. Yeah, the CRX, I did like this car. I chose this car pretty much because it weighs nothing. It's very, very light. And it's a nice car. It's a pretty fast car. However, I got a bit unlucky on this race. At the front, sorry, this is for second, sorry. Towards the front, I should say. A Camaro led. Ignore the slight graphical glitch. I don't know what's going on with this car. Don't worry about it. Pretend it's not there. It's fine. There was a rather unusual battle occurring between the biggest car and the smallest car on the track. Interestingly, you would expect the Camaro to pull away in a straight line, however it really didn't. Admittedly, yes, the Mini is in the slipstream and the Camaro is punching a rather large hole in the air. However, the Mini was doing an incredible job of keeping up with this thing in a straight line as they come into the first corner. Mini's not quite far enough alongside to sort of have a look. However, the Camaro struggling to get his car stopped, and sure enough, on the exit, the Mini can just put down more power. The Camaro tries going around the outside. A little bit of lag going on there. Camaro just can't hold it. Not really surprised. It's tough going around the outside of the car that has more grip than you. Very unlikely that that's going to end well, but he tried. Didn't quite work out for him. Lost quite a few places, but well, it was worth a try in the end. What have we got? I was again still making slow progress through the field, and had been caught up to the back of an MR2. Had a good couple of laps racing against this car as we come into the first corner. Had a little bit of a look. As I said before, the brakes on this CRX probably the best brakes out there. Maybe the Mini was better on the brakes, but this thing could brake so late. Couldn't quite get the move done in the first corner though. However, with a very good run through this section, I was on the inside as we come around the top of the hill. Don't really like overtaking here particularly, always a bit scary. However, since I was there, I thought I might as well try. Couldn't quite get my car turned. I end up on the outside as we run through the very fast chicane. The MR2 get things wrong. He clipped the curb this time, had a sort of like a mini tank slapper, ended up bumping me off the road. He very graciously waits and lets me past. That's just the kind of thing that we get a little bit more when we're racing on Forza 5. It's just sort of small errors that can creep in. Also, just from the lack of grip, the lack of experience, and yeah, you've got to accept that pretty much. And I was fully aware that was likely to happen when it came to this race. At the front though, and it was the other CRX, proving that these are pretty good cars, that was going to take the win. This race wasn't the most exciting of versus the communities. Sort of after kind of the halfway mark, everybody was kind of within sight of the car in front, but not really closing, and they weren't really falling back either. And so yeah, it was just sort of, I wouldn't say like a complete procession as such, but yeah, there wasn't a huge amount of kind of overtaking going on. Still, it was a fairly enjoyable race. The third and final race was at the Sebring Club Circuit. Again, another track that we've raced quite a few times on Forza 4, and another notorious first corner. Very tight, very narrow hairpin. However, despite the lack of grip, everybody got through there absolutely fine. Why can we not have that on Forza 4? Every time we've raced this circuit, we have problems at the first corner. But yeah, on this time things were absolutely fine. They're trying to go 4 wide. It's not a good idea. Never try and go 4 wide. Anywhere, pretty much. In the end, the Elan comes off a little bit worse. Has a game of pinball between the Civic and something else. The Mini goes very wide. Mr. Bean's not driving particularly well. Managed to take out the cameraman and ends up quite a long way off the track. Husky had started fairly far back on the grid, was making quite a lot of progress this round, having caught up to the back of the Civic. Husky drove, I can't remember what he drove in the second race. He gave up with his Beetle. I think he went for an Audi of some sort. Didn't do particularly well in the second race. However, back to the rather fast Beetle that was all over the back of a Civic Type R as they round the final corner. Now, Sebring, it can be a bit of a tough place to overtake on this one. Your best overtaking spots come at the end of two very long straights, which means you need a car with a fair amount of straight line speed, and while Husky's Beetle was quick through the corners, did not have the speed of the Civic. In fact, the Civic was one of the fastest cars here. On the outside of a Subaru, it is a bit unlikely to go around the outside of somebody into the first corner, and while he tried his best, he did leave the door wide open, and Husky can dive up the inside in the Mini. You would expect down this next back straight coming up towards your next best sort of overtaking spot, the Civic should have munched the pair of them. However, he kind of got boxed in behind the the BRZ. Couldn't really go anywhere, couldn't use that straight line speed, which means Husky makes up two positions in sort of two corners. The Civic is still trying to find a way past the blooming Subaru. If you can hold it around the outside through this corner, you'll then be on the inside for the next couple, and sure enough, that is what the Civic does. The Subaru puts a wheel on the dirt, has a big slide as well to keep control of it. Subaru, though, wasn't to have the best of races in having lost positions to Husky and to the Civic. Two more cars would come up behind him. First, the Escort Cosworth goes all the way around the outside of the final corner. Good overtake, that's a very tough place getting past. It is a really long way around the outside there. You need quite a lot of grip to be able to do that. Then there's a drag race down towards the first corner. The Subaru is the quickest of the three, but again, he kind of gets boxed in a little bit as they come under braking into the first corner. Things all go a little bit wrong. The Escort gets caught on the back of the CRX, sorry, and yeah, it's one of those accidents where the car in front can't do anything because he's being pushed, and the car behind can't really do anything because he's got nowhere to go. Yeah, unfortunately, the CRX comes off worse there of the three. The real winner out of all of that is the Mr. Bean's Mini that has come flying past all of them and is now about to get past the Subaru. The Minis were actually really very fast around here, although slightly difficult to control. I yet again had started at the back of the field and yet again had a poor start avoiding the accidents around me, as the Mini has some more problems. However, things for me were to go from bad to worse as I put a wheel on the curb, which was a stupid thing to do, and sure enough, my CRX goes round. Unfortunately, I was collected by a Fiat, and despite that not looking particularly spectacular and not being particularly fast, it killed both the cars. Just 100% killed. I think it killed absolutely everything in my car, like all of the internals. It was just destroyed. Fairly similar story, I would imagine, with the Fiat. Yeah, there's a bit of an odd one that I've seen much bigger crashes get away with a lot less damage, and yeah, it's a shame. I apologise to the Fiat on that one. It's just one of those things. Not much the Fiat could do about it, and I certainly didn't want to be facing the wrong way at that point. Again, this race became a little bit spread out further back. At the front, though, things were pretty close. The Mini had broken itself, and despite actually leading, or technically leading, it wasn't going to be long before these three were going to find a way past, while the Mini was still holding its own around the corners. Of course, it lacks any straight line speed. It actually was a pretty quick car in a straight line to begin with, but yeah, with damage, you're not going to be going anywhere fast. I'm not quite sure how Husky managed to get around the outside of the Civic. I think the Civic was being a little bit cautious, and Husky made the most of it, and again, with the Camaro tangling with the Mini and then tangling with the Civic, Husky found himself up into first, pretty much. Yeah, again, as I said, the overtaking wasn't always the cleanest on here. There was a few more bumps and scrapes than we would normally see. As I said, though, this race became kind of spread out. It also doesn't help that there isn't a pit lane on the Sebring Club circuit. While I do quite like this track, I think it makes for an interesting challenge. The lack of pit lane means if you take damage, not necessarily terminal damage like I suffered, but if you just take a small amount of damage, you can't go and get it fixed, or if you knacker your steering or something, you can't fix it, which means you will drop off the back of the field and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. So yeah, the field does tend to come a little bit spread out. The Fiesta, though, was trying his best to keep up with the Subaru, and yeah, there was still some kind of close racing. It's on to the final lap now. I didn't realise it was the final lap when I was filming the thing because of Forza telemetry, and the back market as well to get out of the way of Husky. And Husky's Beetle was leading, and you would think he had a fairly decent margin back to second place as they run on to the start-finish straight. Third place, Mr. Bean's Mini, amazing. I don't know how he got back up to third. was there as well. However, the Civic and the Mini were quicker than the Beetle, and they all crossed the line rather close. It was probably one of the closest finish I think we've ever seen in Versus the Community between Husky and the Civic. Husky did take the win by a tiny margin. The Mini wasn't far off either. It was an incredibly close finish. Now I noticed the AI do something rather weird. Once the AI took control of the cars at the end of the race, they could not drive. I don't know what is going on. The Mini went straight into the wall. The Camaro followed him in. Husky's Beetle followed as well. The Escort ran very wide into the tyre bundle. Ignore the Elan, that was a player. What have we got next? The Subaru just about made the turn. The Fiesta, no, the Fiesta didn't make the turn. What? I don't know what's going on. Why? I mean, okay, I've had a few times where I've seen the AI sort of take your car across the grass a little bit. There's the CRX is on the grass. Are we going to? No, we're not going to make that turn at all. I don't really know what was going on there. AI wasn't very happy about trying to drive them cars around the track. A bit of a funny one, that one, but never mind. However, that is it for this FailRace versus the community. It was pretty much what I expected. I was expecting there to be a few more mistakes. There were a few crashes. However, it was still good fun. There was still some close racing. There's still some good overtaking. Yeah, it's always like to be a bit difficult coming onto this game where we're all much less experienced and it's all much trickier, much slidier. The curbs are a lot more unpredictable. They seem to be affecting a lot of cars differently. And me and a few other cars had quite a few problems with them. However, yeah, next versus the community, we're not going to be on Forza 5. We're going to go back to Forza 4. As I realised, not everybody has an Xbox One yet or who has Forza 5 yet. So yeah, we're going to go back to Forza 4 for next week. The next versus the community shall be on Thursday, the 13th of February. It shall start at 7 PM GMT time. We're going to do something a little bit different. Don't think we've done this before. We're going to be racing A-Class. We're going to be racing an A-Class car, though. The car we're going to be using is the 2005 Ford Mustang GT. You can tune it however you want to make it A-Class. Maybe you'll go for a little bit more power. Maybe you'll go for lots of downforce. It's up to you. You can build the car however you like for A-Class. I think it'll be interesting to see how people build their cars differently. It'll be interesting to see some variations, see how things pan out when we're all using the same basic car and see how we go about tuning them. The Mustang is going to be not the best handling cars in the world. It may be a little bit trickier racing. There may be a few incidences. Whenever we run A-Class, there tends to be more incidences, but I think it'll be quite interesting to see. And by giving it A-Class, it means that you have a bit more options for upgrades, and you should be able to make these cars handle fairly well, I would have thought, for A-Class. So yeah, if you want to take part, then you can sign up on our forums. The link will be in the description. You find the versus the community section, and all the information will be in there. However, that is it for this video, guys, so thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.